Aloha, it's CreativeNameToStandOut again with another battle report. This time I'm bringing you a 2,000 point game between my Dark Elves and an opponent's Brettonian list. So after I put up that last channel update telling you guys my expectations that the Warhammer battle reports would probably slow down in November, I got a lot of, quite a few messages from the local community, ready to set up games with me. And I think that's really awesome of the local community here. They really helped this channel put out the content, and I'm just very thankful for everybody, giving me a call and wanting to play the game. So I just want to thank them real quick, and let's move on to the characters. So from right to left, just to help you guys identify what is what, we have the level 4 of Life on the horse, the level 2 of Beast next to her, then the regular Paladin, as regular as one can be, another Paladin BSB, and then finally his Lord. Starting on his left flank, we have his 3 Pegasus Knights, then his smaller units of Knights of the Realm. Then in the center we have his Trebuchet, his large unit of Knights of the Realm with his 4 mounted characters in this unit. Then on the right flank we have his Peasant Bowmen, 19 of them, with the unmounted Damsel. And then finally on the right flank there you can see his 6 Questing Knights. Moving over to my side, we have facing the Questing Knights my 5 Dark Riders, and this is after Vanguard moves, so they're here on the hill already. Then we move over to the center, we see that we have my Executioner block, then the Witches in the center. Behind the Witches will be my level 4 Sorceress. Next to that will be the War Hydra, and finally the large unit of Spearmen with the BSB. Moving on to the far right, we have my other 2 units of Fast Cav. One is the Doomfire Warlocks here in the front, and then further to the right will be another unit of Dark Riders. Here's the overview picture of the board again, just so you can see how the Vanguard moves panned out, and then we go into my first turn. So I push everything forward. He'll need 10s to hit any of my units, of course, except for those Fast Cav. I move the Fast Cav there because I want to have him fail charge and hopefully get my Executioners in range to charge him. Or even if he does run them down, he'll be really close to my Executioners and I can get rid of that unit of Knights. Otherwise, I think overall I wasn't very aggressive with my Dark Riders here. I forgot that Brettonians usually forfeit the first turn, so I played my Fast Cav a little conservatively in the beginning. Over here though, I moved them over out of range for the Pegasus Knight's arc, and we move into the magic phase. Alright, so my goal in this magic phase is to get rid of those 2 Dispel scrolls he basically has. I cast Thunderbolt first, but he uses his dice to get rid of it. I target his Pegasus Knights, and then I go for Comet of Casadora, hoping I can cast it, but I fail. And the only thing I have left that I can realistically cast is Soul Blight, and I get that off on these Pegasus Knights. We go into my shooting phase, and it yields no casualties, and we go straight into Brettonian's turn 1. So he declares 1 charge with these Questing Knights into my Dark Riders. I, of course, flee, and unfortunately he catches me. Now, this wasn't out of the possibility of things that could have happened. I expected this. I wish it would have happened, but it still lines me up for my strategy to get rid of those Knights with my Executioners. In the movement phase, he kind of just moves everything up to create long charges for myself. He moves his Pegasus Knights to try to deal with these Fast Cav units, and then he jumps into his magic phase. The Bretts kick off the magic phase with Shield of Thorns, and I don't want to take any casualties I don't have to, so I go ahead and try to dispel it and successfully do. He then tries for Dwellers Below and fails to get it. He goes in the shooting phase, and unfortunately he kills some of my Executioners with a Trebuchet shot. It kind of drifts off a little bit so it doesn't get a direct hit, and then he follows up with some bow shots and actually kills quite a few Executioners. And with that, that's the end of his turn, and we go into Dark Elf turn 2. Alright, so we'll go into Dark Elf turn 2, and I have quite a few charges to declare. First, these Executioners into the Questing Knights, and it's a pretty easy charge. Then I declare 2 fairly long charges. I need 11s for them, with the Witches into the big unit of Knights, and then the Hydra into the smaller unit of Knights. Unfortunately, I don't make either one of those charges. And that leads to my movement phase, and I try my best to make these Dread Spears relevant. They're in a bad position after those 2 failed charges. I try my best to wheel them around to be able to react to the Cav charges in his turn. I'm just not going to be able to, but I end up looking like this. And then I move my Dark Riders over here to hopefully be a distraction to these Pegasus Knights while I shoot my Doomfire Warlocks towards the center. Alright, so we're going into Magic turn 2, and I really need something to happen, but I know my opponent basically has 2 Dispel scrolls. I try to get some little spells off, but he stops it with his dice. He even lets Thunderbolt go through. I do pretty well with the rolls, but he also does well with his. We go into my last spell, and I just 6 dice Soul Blight, and luckily I get it off irresistibly. So we go into the combat phase, and we only have this one combat. I really felt like I was going to just butcher these questing knights, but it was kind of underwhelming. I go in here, and I only kill 3 of the knights. He doesn't do any wounds in return. He fails his leadership check, and he flees. Now, we forgot to pull off the banner, but it doesn't really impact anything because he can still rally on his normal leadership. And that's pretty much it. I turn to face, getting ready for the 2 cavalry charges into my witches. So here's an overview of the board before we go into his charges, and he does declare both charges with those knights into my witches. This looks really impressive, I think. He's going to easily blow through these witches. Hopefully I can take down a bunch of knights with me, but there's really no chance of them sticking. He also declares a charge with his Pegasus Knights into my Doomfire Warlocks. Here I'm a little bit more confident. He is getting a rear charge on me, but I do have the ward save, and I'm strength 4 with poison and all that other junk, so I feel fairly safe here. And then he rallies his fleeing questing knights over here on the right side. So we go into magic phase, and this is just one of those phases where I do end up stopping everything, but I think my opponent really outplays me here. He goes for Shield of Thorns, which in the end doesn't really matter because I'm going to lose the combat anyways, and then he casts Wild Form, forcing me to use my Dispel scroll. Then we go into combat, and we have these Pegasus Knights not do any wounds to me, and I kill a Pegasus Knight and put a wound on another. And then we go into the real combat. It's not supported, but he's going to beat them anyways. I do quite a few wounds to the left unit since he doesn't have the character wall there. But of course the character wall on the other side just stops everything. I think I do 1 wound to his yellow paladin, and then that's it. He does overrun, and thankfully everything was set up pretty nicely that I will get this flank charge with my executioners into them. So that at least worked out. Alright, so here we go into Dark Elf turn 3, and I'm going to declare this charge at the Executioners in the flank of the Brettonian Knights, and I'm going to easily make it. And then I really take all the rest of the units, and I encircle the units themselves, putting on the pressure, making his options diminish. And so what I have here, what I'm thinking in my mind is I'll be able to charge the small unit of knights in the flank and then overrun into the bigger flank. I don't realize, though, that you could easily just kind of push them out a little bit more and get it to where I end up having to charge them in the rear, and I won't be overrunning into the flank of the knights. But it is what it is, and we'll see how it works out. In the movement phase, I really only have this unit here to move, so I move the Dark Riders along to shoot at the Trebuchet, and then we jump into the magic phase. We go into the magic phase, and it's 4 dice to 3, and I try to get off 2 spells. I really should just pick 1 spell and then throw all my dice at it, because my opponent has 2 Dispel Scrolls, basically, and he's not going to let me get a magic phase off unless I force 1 through. And I don't, so we go straight into combat. So here we are into the combat, and my executioners are touching 4 knights, so it's 1 champion, and his 2 characters move over to help out too. He leaves his BSB out front, but he brings his Lord and his other Paladin who's been injured already to the side. So I'm in contact with 1 row of regular guys and then another character wall. So we do that, and he offers a challenge with his champion. My champion declines. There's no reason for him to fight against the 1 model, so he's just going to contribute his attacks to the rest of the unit. And that's what we do. I kill off his champion. I think I kill off 2 knights, and I throw a killing blow on the Lord, but the lady protects, and I hate the lady, but that's what the lady's for. And so he wins combat even though I got him in the flank. And I do pass my Leadership 6 test. He tests the reform, and he reforms like so. In the other combat, the Pegasus Knights do 1 wound to none, and unfortunately I break and I run away, but he doesn't catch me. So we go into Brettonian turn 3, and he has 1 charge, the Pegasus Knights into the fleeing Doomfire Warlocks. Unfortunately he catches them, and then he moves his questing knights over to get close to the Hydra so that eventually they can contribute to the fight. In the shooting phase, his catapult lands directly onto my spearmen and kills, I think, half of them. And then we go into the magic phase. We go into the magic phase. One thing I'm worried about is Wiston's Wild Form, which means I should throw all my dice against it, but I don't, and he gets it off, and then he casts some other spell, fails to get it, miscasts because of the ring, and kills off 4 knights. In combat, I decide it's now a good time to declare a challenge with my Executioner champion. This time, since he doesn't have a champion himself, he has to accept with one of his heroes. He decides to take it with his injured Paladin. I roll another killing blow against him, but the lady freaking protects again, and then his Lord just goes to town and kills the rest of my Executioners by himself. So that guy is a beast, and so he reforms like so, and we go into my turn. Alright, so here we go into Dark Elf turn 4, and I'm going to declare some charges. Now these charges aren't going to be done legally. because I know my opponent had some intent and I wanted to kind of respect that intent, but I also didn't want to completely screw myself out of being able to do anything. My opponent wants to try to make it to where only one of my units is able to charge, and they won't be able to get in fully. So if I do my Spearmen, they're not going to be able to get in completely, and my Hydra won't be able to get in at all, or if I do my Hydra, then I can't get my Spearmen at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of, cut the baby in the middle, I guess you'd say, and do something that's absolutely not legal, but that kind of respects those intentions. So here we go into the actual charge. This is what it looks like. This is obviously not possible. If I would have brought the Hydra in first like I did, then the Spearmen can't, turn to actually get engaged at all. But this is the kind of the compromise that we settled on. We were discussing this for a second, so we came up with this solution, I guess you'd say. So this is a nice middle ground. It keeps my Spearmen from getting all their attacks in, and being the Knights, he has faith that these Knights can hold against just a couple Spearmen. And then the Hydra doesn't get completely robbed out of the attacks, but he should be able to handle the Hydra. Now, what I could have done, and it would have been legal, but it would kind of been it'd almost be unsporting, because I knew my opponent had an intent. So if I would have done it this way, it would be the opposite of what my opponent intended to do, and that would just be bad news. So this is what I could have done to make it a legal charge, and it would have been a little bit more beneficial. I could have first declared charge with my Spearmen at these 3 Knights, and if you would have chose to stay, I wouldn't have been able to make the complete turn. Like, I could pivot, but at some point those back ranks would have kind of collided with the Hydra as I tried to move forward, and so I wouldn't be able to complete the charge on my own. So what I could have done, as you can see in this arrow, is I could have just pushed straight forward and contacted his corner, which would force him to engage me. He'd have to move into me, and you can see that in this picture. And these are rough sketches, so these are not by any means exact scientific models, but then I could have then pivoted the Hydra just slightly and then pushed it forward, and just like before, I wouldn't have been able to completely turn the Hydra to become flush with the Knights, because this combat would block it, but in response then he would have to turn into me. Now, this is just how it should have worked out on a technical terms. I don't think it really would have impacted the game very much, but I just want everybody to know that I'm aware of how it should have worked out, and that the charge I made was completely illegal. But it was kind of meet in the middle. I knew what my opponent wanted to do. I knew that it wasn't entirely possible, but I wanted to respect that, and so that's how we executed it. Now, if it ended up like this and I would have broke the Knights, maybe I would have overran into this other combat if I decided to do that first. But I'm only so many Spearmen, and I'm going against a character bust, so at the end of the day, I think, especially as we go forward in this battle report, I don't think it impacted it much. But just for some food for thought, I guess, to help understand how the game mechanics work for anybody else who's interested in that. And so after that, for whatever reason, I skip everything else. I don't declare a charge with my Dark Riders. I don't have anything really to shoot with, and I don't do my magic. So we go straight into combat. Sure enough, I beat these 3 Knights. They break. They probably should have fled further to the right, but I mean, I didn't pursue, so it doesn't matter. I reform and turn to face. I'm screwed. There's nothing I can do. If the Hydra dies, I at least don't want my flank to get hit. Sure enough, the Hydra does die. He does overrun, and he runs into my spears, and he's going to end up killing them. And that's pretty much how the game goes. We play a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, he's probably just going to clean off the table. So it's a really fun game. It's a beautifully painted army. This army, actually, if you're interested in it, I don't know any of the details, but I do know that it's available on eBay. He's trying to get rid of it, but it's a really nice army. So if you're interested in a Brettonian army, search on eBay and maybe you'll come across it. And otherwise, the Dark Elves end up losing this one pretty badly. So at the end of the game, my opponent pretty much tabled me. I got the trebuchet, his smaller unit of Knights of the Realm, because the guy fled off the board, and then a couple banners. So it was a pretty bad loss. I had made a ton of mistakes here. My opponent played really well, and I guess the 2 things that stand out most for me was my conservative play of my fast cav in the beginning turns. I should have pushed them further, especially on the right, and then I should have kept the left side closer to the center instead of trying to swing out so far. And then the other part was my magic. Sometimes I try to get too cute with my magic and try to get off my spells by, getting them off a little here and a little there, when usually, sometimes, I really need a certain spell off, and I should just throw all my dice at it, but instead I try to, trick my opponent by, casting a 1-dice spell here and a 1-dice spell here, hoping that by the end of the magic turn I can just freely cast the spell I want. So I really need to look into changing that type of mindset I have when it comes to the magic phase. But overall, this was a really fun game. It's a great looking army, and my opponent is always awesome. He's always bringing these awesome painted armies, so I want to thank him a lot. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate everybody's likes and subscriptions and comments, and I hope to have another one by the end of the week. Alright guys, see you later.